Do you have an AIM Solo lap timer? Are you getting the most out of it? I know a lot of people who have an AIM Solo or the Solo DL lap timer for track use, and literally all they're using it for is to look at their lap times. This lap timer costs about $500, and there's certainly a lot more capability while they're currently using it. If you really want just a cheap lap timer to look at your laps around the track, there's a lot cheaper alternatives, and even some that are phone based. So I'm just going to cover some real basic information about using your lap timer, how to connect it to your computer, and just briefly discuss how I use this to assess my riding. In full disclosure, I'm not getting paid a dime by AIM. I do like their product. It's not without its faults, but I do like it. There's a couple reasons why I'm making this video. I see a lot of people at the track who are using it really just for lap timer. They don't even know how to access the data, how to assess their riding. The second thing is really just, I'll talk about how I use the lap timer, how I really think it's a valuable tool to assess your riding and how your riding changes and how to improve your riding. One of the things I hear quite a bit is, how do I get faster? How do I improve my lap times? Etc. Now, this isn't the cure-all. This is not like a magic wand, but this is going to give you a lot of insight in terms of how you're riding and where you can pick up time. I mean, certainly you can work with a coach or have someone follow you or have someone even videotape you, but that's only kind of like one perspective. This has a lot of data, and the data does not lie. And you can go back years later, retrieve the data, and see how you've changed your riding. One other thing I'll mention with AIM, again, I'm not sponsored by them, but their customer service is fantastic. I recently had an issue with this lap timer. I sent it off to them, or I talked to them on the phone, got a customer service rep. They were super friendly. They said, send us the lap timer. I sent it to them. They fixed the issue and sent it back to me, and I literally had it back in my hands in just over a week. I mean, that was fantastic. So yeah, and there's a lot of other videos on how to use your lap timer. This is like crash course and how I use it, and really just for people I know who have no idea how to use it. So without further ado, let's get into this. Let's say you've run your lap timer at a track day. You have all this data on here, and how do you access this wonderful data I'm talking about? First thing you need to do is really turn on Wi-Fi on the lap timer. So you cycle the power on. Right now it's currently off. You get to the screen, you hit any one of the buttons. What you want to look for is the menu button, which is down in the lower left corner. So you hit menu, then you hit next several times till you see the Wi-Fi icon. Hit enter. Make sure that's on. If your Wi-Fi was off and you've just turned it on, you may need to cycle the power, turn it off and turn it back on before your computer will recognize it. For whatever reason, that's how it is on my computer. So I always have to kind of remember that. The other thing which is kind of interesting is like this screen is going to show you the SSID, which is the ID of, or the serial number of your lap timer. That's located here, like mine is 004096, for example, and that is also on the back of the lap timer as well. So when you're trying to connect, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that SSID in terms of how to connect your lap timer to your computer. One other thing, when your lap timer is on, anyone with Wi-Fi on their computer can access your lap timer. So if you don't want people kind of sniffing through your data and you're at the track, just turn Wi-Fi off. The lap timer will still function 100%. It's just there are other people that they access their data at the track. So that's obviously when you turn your lap timer on or off. But just something to keep in mind that if your Wi-Fi is on any computer that can see that Wi-Fi signal, can connect to your lap timer, download whatever they want. Okay, so next thing you want to do is download Race Studio 3. That's shown here, and I'm going to put a link in the description. I know this is a legit link because someone who works for AIM actually sent me this link to the AIM down software. Because if you look for AIM lap timer, there's AIM Sportline, there's multiple AIM related sites. Some are European sites, but this is the legit US site. So you want to download Race Studio. Actually, I should probably update that. Mine is a little out of date. Regardless, you download that, install it, whatever, and then you should see the Race Studio 3 icon here. We're going to start Race Studio 3. Okay, so now this is up, and we are going to connect this to our lap timers. And now in terms of connecting to your device, we're going to go to where it says Wi-Fi. And see, here we are. Here's the Solo2, the 004096. That's my lap timer. Going to connect to that. Okay, so now we know we're connected if these pair of arrows turn green. That means that the device is connected. So we select this. Here's our AIM Solo2. So now it's reading the data that's on the lap timer. We're going to go to download. And I have a bunch of data on here that I haven't downloaded yet. But before we do that, one quick thing is, so where does all this data end up going when you download it on your computer? It's actually downloaded on your local disk. Like for me, it's C AIM Sport Race Studio 3 user data. And so we look at data. See, the last time I downloaded anything was back in June. Double click on this directory and see these are all like a couple sessions at Tally Grand Prix Raceway, TGPR. So now so let's get back to the lap timer here. So what do we want to download here? I mean, there's a couple sessions I wasn't really doing a whole lot. I mean, like, 150s or whatever. I wasn't really riding, for myself. Yeah, so like maybe I'll download this 147. This is probably nothing of interest, nor is this 151. 215, I don't, I don't know what was going on there. Regardless, let's download this 147. That is a real, stellar, lap time. And I also have some data from Barber. All right, let's download this one. We'll download that. And you can populate this field, and it does remember the last things you entered. So here's me, here's my bike, and it recognized that track, Road Atlanta in Georgia. It recognizes quite a few tracks. I'm not going to go into how to set up your own track. I mean, I had to do that for Tally since that's not in their database. We'll just say okay. So now this is downloading, and we'll look at that in a minute, or we'll look at the Barber laps. Okay, so that's all downloaded. So if we go back to this, we see that the 147 session, I already downloaded that. I don't think there's anything else too exciting in here. So one of the good things, you can select what's downloaded and whatnot. I mean, all these other sessions are maybe not too exciting. So let's see, from Barber, let's say I want to download this 141. Yeah, I mean, you can really, just to save yourself some disk space, you can be a little selective. So we've selected the sessions, download them. Yeah, these are all at Barber. So we'll just say okay. Now the other thing, I guess I'll mention that after you've downloaded stuff, you've kind of verified that you have this. You can go through the menu and delete. You can wipe out all the data you want on your lap timer. If you don't do that, it will overwrite data. So it's not the end of the world. Depends. I guess I've never counted how much data you can put on here, but this is certainly, oh my goodness. Let's see. Well, that was 2 track weekends. We have the Road Atlanta, Barber. Let's see actually what else is on here. Okay, so these are all downloaded. That's from Barber. A couple days at Tally that I was riding around. April at Tally, April again at Barber. Now I'm almost positive anything I wanted from these sessions I downloaded. So then we go all the way back to November, Tally. Yeah, I see I downloaded whatever that session was. So I mean, there's a fair amount of data in here. I can't remember if I've cleared the data out or whatnot. So, all right, we have the data downloaded from the lap timer to the computer. So what do we do now? So now we're going to go over to Race Studio 3. That's this little RS3 icon. And here's some of the data that we downloaded. Here's the Road Atlanta days, or the one session, the 147. And then here's data from Barber. This was end of June. So let's just take a look we can look at this one session. We'll click on this, and we could see every lap that I did during that session. And certainly you can sort this by lap time or time. And it basically tells you what your best lap time is here and how far off you were from your best lap time. So let's just say we want to look at this. Let's say the best lap time I did that day, that 141.3. Just double click on this. Now this is, I think, something I can set up. I just haven't got around to doing this. This is just showing like battery, voltage, but we don't care about that. We only look at GPS speed. So we go over here to the left, select GPS speed, and we're going to basically delete that information for the battery, voltage or whatever. Okay, I'm just gonna make this a little more clear. I'm gonna increase the line width to 3, and I'm gonna change our GPS speed, make that blue. All right, so what is this actually showing us here? This is showing the speed as we get around the track. So here's the graph, which is showing speed versus distance. Here's a little map down here in the lower left, which is indicating the position on the track by this circle. So we can see how we're getting around on the track. So this is all wonderful, but how useful is this? Well, right now this is not super useful. What we need to do is look at, let's say, a comparison. I'm going to go back to all of the data I have. This area in the left is all the data that I've looked at previously. So for example, at GNF last year, which was in October, that was actually my best lap time. That's that 137. So let's just click on this and we can see the comparison between what I did in April versus like what I did in October. So now this is kind of interesting, really, and we can actually march through this entire lap and see a lot of information. Here we're starting at start finish, and what's showing up here in the upper right is a speed comparison. So right out of the gate, during that was like the last lap at GNF for this race, I was doing 3 miles an hour faster going past start finish. So I was already digging myself a hole right out of the gate. Now of course, in April it wasn't a race. I was just riding around, but it's kind of interesting to say, okay, what was I doing different in October versus how I was riding in April, for example. And this is again showing the speed versus distance. Now this other window I want to point out down the second half of this window, this is showing the time differential. The green lap is faster than the blue lap, as we can see in this little legend. The blue lap is a 141.3, the green lap is a 137.7. And as we march along, we could see that the difference is growing. Obviously at the end, the difference is whatever that works out to, about 4 seconds different over the entire lap. But where are we losing time? Where are we making up time? In this case, we can see like going into turn 1, I was doing about 6 miles an hour faster, and this just carries through all the way through. You can see that this time deficit just keeps going down, down, down. I was going through, and we follow where we are on the track with the little circle down in the lower left. So I was going through turn 2 faster, getting on the gas. I always kind of let off a little bit right at the top of the hill, but then coming down into approaching Charlotte's Web. So that's after turn 4, going down into this section. And actually I'll try to expand this a little so it's a little more clear. So, and I'll talk about this in a minute, what you can see on this view as well. So here I basically let off the gas, almost identical spot, but I was carrying 4 miles an hour faster going into Charlotte's Web. Braked here a little bit more. It's really, there's maybe a slight little blip where in the April ride in blue I was slightly faster, but then in terms of coming out of here, but then almost identical. And you can see like, so from turn 5 to turn going into kind of like a museum turn, you see how that's pretty flat because basically doing an identical speed, and then coming down into the museum turn. That is interesting also. I held a little bit more speed going in April, more speed going into the chicane, about the same speed through the chicane, but I got on the gas here earlier coming out of the chicane. And again, more top speed, before I hit the braking zone. Again, so at this point, this is going into turn 12. That's a difference of 2.2 seconds. I mean, that's like ridiculous. Yeah, so we can look at this more speed. So sometimes it could be braking markers. Sometimes it could be just raw speed, which makes a difference. For example, going through, let's say turn two, or going into turn one. I mean, this is showing I can carry more speed. So maybe the next time I go in there, I would just try to work on carrying a little bit more speed through turn one. And you can look at where the biggest. Now this is pretty constant. I mean, I guess from the October ride, it's pretty much more speed everywhere. There's a few spots which are like flat, which means I was doing exactly what I did then again. But there's other places going into the chicane, carrying more speed, coming out of the chicane, carrying more speed. Braking markers are very similar. So this certainly does provide some insight on terms of what to work on. For me, if I was trying to get back to that 137, I would essentially be carrying more speed at some of these turns, getting on the gas harder, so that even if I have the same braking point, you're still carrying more speed. So I mean, for example, looking at the bottom of like turn two, the difference is about 0.6 of a second. Carrying more speed up to where basically I'm braking going into turn five, that's minus now one for a differential. So that's about 0.4, roughly half a second difference, just carrying more speed from turn two to turn four. And it adds up. I mean, you could see over the course of a whole lap, it really adds up. The other thing we can look at with this graph, we can actually zoom in and look at the lines. So going into Charlotte's Web, the green curve, I was using the whole track all the way at the edge. I came in here and cut it a little bit tighter. Let's see, going into the museum turn, I went over the rumble strip a little bit more, increased the radius coming out here. So again, all these things, you can really learn a lot. My lines are pretty consistent. I mean, I guess the other thing I'll mention when you're looking at data, you're looking at improving, you can only make so many improvements before you fix your lines. Trying to improve your time if you have lousy lines, that is like trying to exercise away a bad diet. I mean, your lines are fundamental and all your markers should be consistent. Like for me, like all these points where I brake and where I get on the gas are pretty consistent. How hard I'm getting on the gas, obviously some places are identical, like leaving Charlotte's Web going to Museum Turn, that's like nearly line on line. There's other places I'm essentially just carrying more speed. So again, this is one thing you can look at in terms of like improving, just looking at your riding. What am I doing on the track? I mean, let's say you had a lap which was really stellar. Well, like why did you do that? If no one's watching you, or as long as everything's under control and you went into a turn faster, then you should see that giant blip on this differential on like, oh, I did this at this turn and that caused this much of a difference. Well, now you can try to do that again. Another thing which is interesting to look at, I actually did get a hold of someone else's data who was significantly faster than me. So if we look at their data, so here's someone else's data who their lap in red is 132. What I did is my best personal is 137. So I mean, this is crazy. Look at this. They're going past start finish 5 miles an hour faster and going through turn one, turn two. I mean, this is crazy. They're going through turn two, significantly faster. My 84 versus their 92. That's crazy. One thing, I mean, certainly they're getting on the gas harder coming out of here. We're actually about equal going through turn two. And this is interesting also. Like I mentioned, typically I let off the gas a little bit going over that hump in turn four. They're like basically not letting off nearly as much as I am. So basically from turn two to going into Charlotte's Web, I mean, we're talking about half a second difference here. And then by the end of this, that's like that's a second. So that's like 0.6 of a difference just for those 3 turns. Another thing which is really interesting is certainly I'm letting off the brakes. They're holding the gas, a little bit longer, but we're braking down to roughly the same spot. So going through Charlotte's Web. So I guess when I look at this, it's like, well, I'm not going to go through turn two or Charlotte's Web any faster than this guy. I mean, I feel like I'm pretty close to the limit personally, but there's certainly other places I can pick up the pace, like holding the gas a little bit longer here, getting on the gas longer here, getting on the carrying more speed past start finish into turn one. There's another interesting point. Going into the chicane again, they're holding the gas longer, holding the gas longer, holding the gas longer, carrying more speed from here to here. This is interesting to see how other people ride. Like I said, I look at my data and I feel, I'm pretty consistent, but I need to carry more speed where I know I can. So the whole thing with kind of improving your riding, my opinion at least, is that there's certainly a risk reward to improve your riding. If you take bigger risks at the track, the reward is bigger and the improvement is faster. But obviously the risk of something bad happening is certainly much greater. I may be breaking at the 4 board and he may be breaking at the 2 board, for example. I'm not going to go right from 4 to 2. I'm going to go from 4 to 3.5. Get used to that. Make sure the bike is under control. Go from 3.5 to maybe 3.25, and just march my way. And a lot of it is seat time. Really, just putting laps in, getting used to that, readjusting your brake markers. Like I said, when I looking at consecutive laps, I mean, all my brake, gas, turn-in points, they're all pretty consistent. Obviously, to get faster, you may have to adjust some of these. Obviously, I need to adjust some. If I ever wanted to get down to this pace, there's certainly a lot of things I would have to adjust, but that's a long way off. I mean, that's a big difference, a 5-second difference in lap time. Already when that 37.7 was, my best, that's a big change. One other thing which is really interesting is the split times report. So this is showing this date in October, basically showing lap by lap what your sector times are. And down at the end, there's a best theoretical. So essentially for the entire lap, it looks for all these 8 laps or whatever the race was, it looks at your best sector for every one of those laps and puts them all together. So theoretically, if you ran that pace through that sector and you link them all together, your best theoretical lap is shown here. One last interesting thing is the best rolling lap. So your best rolling lap is essentially at some point on the track, let's say from sector 7 on one lap to sector 6 on the following lap. For whatever reason, you had strung together a full lap, which was really solid. And that's what the best rolling lap means. So not exactly at start finish, but maybe from some reference point on the track all the way around, that's your best rolling lap. So I really feel that this data is really important to kind of look at your riding, see how you're riding and what you're doing, try to make improvements in your riding. So this is really just a crash course for some people who have a lap timer but aren't using it. I think it's potential. And this is just scratching the surface. There's certainly a lot more information. There's other channels, there's math channels where you can combine various results. And there's plenty of videos on how to get into the next step on using your lap timer properly. So I hope this is all beneficial for you who have a lap timer on how to use it a little bit more effectively.